I have a inversion table where I get on every morning, you know, we go upside. I don't go all the way upside down, but I go like this because it stretches my back and I did 6 minutes.
I think about
All
it.
right, I'm ready. You ready?
Come over and
Well,
try it.
Mike's hot.
That's good.
Okay, I call to order Board of Commissioners work session. This is June the 15th, 2021. Welcome the guests arriving tonight, and also people watching. Also, people watching online. Appreciate everybody watching in on that. We do have 5 items on the agenda tonight that part of the work session, and the first one is a proclamation that I would like to read here to be entered in record. It's proclamation of the town of Rolesville for the Juneteenth Day, 2021. Whereas on January 1, 1863, President Abraham Lincoln issued a final Emancipation Proclamation declaring that all enslaved people in rebellious states would be then, therefore, forever free. And whereas, in addition to freeing the enslaved people held in the Confederate States, the Emancipation Proclamation allowed the participation of black soldiers in the war and declared that the government of the United States will recognize and maintain the freedom of such persons and will do no act or acts to repress such persons or any of them in any efforts may make for the actual freedom. And whereas it took almost 3 years of conflict and loss to bring about the end of the Civil War, and in December 1863, the 13th Amendment of the United States Constitution was nationally ratified, ending the sanctioned institution of slavery. And whereas the news of freedom is disseminated gradually throughout the nation, 2 months after the official surrender of the Confederacy at Almax on June 19, 1865, Union troops arrived in Galveston, Texas, issued a General Order Number 3 announcing freedom to some of the last enslaved people in America. The accumulation of the years of black activism and abolitionists that had fought to end the cruel institution of slavery. And whereas on June 19th or Juneteenth, sometimes referred to as National Freedom Day, Emancipation Day, or Juneteenth, Independence Day, became a day of celebration and the oldest known commemoration of the abolishing of sanctioned slavery in the United States. Whereas on the anniversary of each year, organizations and individuals throughout North Carolina and the nation celebrate African American heritage, history, freedom, culture, with events and ceremonies that reflect the power of the community, family, art, traditions, and face of oppression. Whereas, despite more than 150 years of progress since the abolishment of slavery and the proclamation of the United States government shall do no act or acts to repress such people or persons, there shall remain economic, institution, and social barriers for black people in America. And whereas the town of Rose will recognize Juneteenth as an opportunity to reflect, rejoice, and plan for a brighter future as we continue to address racial injustice in our society today. Now, therefore, I, Ronnie Kern, Mayor of the town of Rolesville, do hereby proclaim June 19th, 2021 as Juneteenth Day in Rolesville and commend its observance to all people. So I think that's something that is getting more and more recognition throughout the nation and states. And I know our governor issued one this year. Our presidents have recognized this date for the past many years, I think, with proclamations and also declarations. So I think it's appropriate for us to do this. I don't really need a motion. I just want to read it into the record tonight. Any comments from the board? Anything?
Breaking news, the Senate, the U.S. Senate just approved June 19th as a national holiday.
Ooh.
Now it has to go to the House, which likely would pass, so timely.
Yeah,
Mayor?
very timely. And it just came out then.
Just came out an hour ago.
Good. good. Okay. Well, thanks. So with that, I will move into some kind of other items of businesses that we have tonight. The first one is our Northeast Area Study presentation from Campo. I think Jason Brown, you're going to help with that also. We got Brandon Watson, I think, that will be virtual tonight. So it's all yours, buddy.
Yes, sir. Good evening, Mayor, Commissioners. We're going to talk a little bit tonight about the Northeast Area Study. So mostly Brandon will do the talking, so I won't bore y'all too much, but I am going to drive for him and also just talk a little bit about the Northeast Area Study. And then thank you all for your involvement with it. There was great public participation with this. I think the Northeast Area Study is one of those things that Campo does that really benefits the communities. It's a small area plan, but Campo's area is so big, it's more of a regional plan, and so it looks at several communities in the northeast part of the county. But it's also really important is it's really how the communities plans get built. So you take your community transportation plan, plug that into the Northeast Area Study, and then the Campo plugs that into the MTP, which then goes on to compete annually for statewide prioritization and other funds. So it's really important for funding the local plan. So I think that's important to point out. So with that, I will turn over to Brandon for his presentation. Brandon, if you're on the line. Do we have sound?
May not be
I
able
don't
to
think
hear.
he's hearing us.
Brandon, can you hear me?
Hey, are you guys able to hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Brandon, can you hear me? Hey, are you guys able to hear me?
Get some feedback.
Yes. Okay, great. I cannot hear you all except through my computer. So I'm going to present here, and yeah, for some reason the audio is not coming through here. I've been listening through the YouTube channel, but I guess just Jason just flag me down if there are questions. YouTube channel. I guess just.
Can you hear, Brandon, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you.
The drag.
Can you hear me?
So Brandon,
better?
so yeah, Brandon, why don't you go ahead and turn off the YouTube channel? We're getting your feedback.
Perfect. Oh, sorry about that.
And
Okay.
if you can hear us, we're ready to go.
Perfect. Thank you, guys. Yeah, so Jason gave a really good introduction. I appreciate that. Are you sharing the PowerPoint, Jason?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, for some reason that's not showing on my end either. But I will run through and I'll just say next slide. So yeah, I'm Brandon Watson. I'm with the Capital Area MPO. I really appreciate you guys giving me some time today to talk about the Northeast Area Study update. Next slide. We've previously been giving updates on the study, so I kind of wanted to give a conclusion here of the project, highlighting work that was done and a brief summary of our second round of outreach and the final product. Next slide. If you'll recall, we started the project in February of 2020 with existing conditions, and we had our first public engagement touch point last summer. The second phase was to analyze, where we met with stakeholder and technical team members on land use scenario planning, as well as some hotspot concept designs last summer. And then our last phase is finishing up now, where we held our second round of public engagement back in February and March, taking comments on draft recommendations and priorities. Next slide. Regarding the last engagement period, which was the virtual open house in late February and early March of this year, the open house interactive maps and survey were available for 24/7 for 3.5 weeks. And it's actually all still viewable through the project website. Next slide. This slide shows a summary of visitors to the open house tent. We had more than 700 unique visitors who accessed the virtual open house. 300 surveys were completed in this round alone, and we received over 50 additional comments and 150 points added to the interactive maps. And then that bottom chart there just shows the project website also had an additional 1,500 unique visitors as well. Next slide. So each of the questions we asked in the survey were focused on prioritization and implementation, and they were framed as ranking or rating from least important to most important, combining and averaging all the answers. That really gave us a starting point for prioritizing the projects. We also folded in timeframe horizon years from the Metropolitan Transportation Plan, which is Campo's region-wide plan, which has funding considerations. And then the third factor was future year deficiency analysis. So what are our needs now and what are our needs in the long term? Next slide. There's a few resources I want to highlight here. One is a completely separate document. That's a summary of the public outreach engagement throughout the project. The next one is a policy guidebook. It builds on a previous effort from the 2014 Northeast Area Study. It reviewed and adopted policies and plans for what's changed and what's still recommended to be updated for each community, but it also took into consideration most recent best practices. And the last is the project workbook, and that really just holds all the recommendations and priorities as we move forward. Next slide. This is just the table of contents for the workbook, so I'm going to go quickly through the chapters to give you a brief idea of what's included. Next slide. The first chapter holds the context for the project, including that this is an update from the 2014 Northeast Area Study. There are 11 communities involved and about the study boundary. Next slide. The next chapter is planning framework, and it's really just all about the process. So it includes outreach tools, our guiding, technical and stakeholder advisory groups throughout the project, and other tools used. Next slide. This next chapter is a regional snapshot. It's basically an existing conditions analysis, looking at what's there now and what does our data project is going to happen moving forward. Next slide. The scenario planning chapter focuses on land use and growth strategy. We played a what-if game about development and redevelopment in your community through a variety of exercises with our stakeholder and our technical teams. Next slide. So chapter 5 includes hotspot concept designs, including 5 unique corridors selected through a data-driven process. We looked at what could be improved in the near and midterm. And the most important part here is that there are other corridors like these, so you can kind of apply these concepts to other corridors in the region. In these hotspot concept designs, we look to really address locations that have a unique challenge. They included elements such as bicycle pedestrian integration, complete streets, development and redevelopment concerns, safety, or other issues. And as you can see here, they represent up to 20% preliminary engineering design. We had 3 rounds of meetings for each location with local staff and NCDOT division and engineering staff. And so just the one shown here, we had one in Youngsville along NC 96 between Long Mill and Park Avenue. It's a 1.3-mile corridor. And we really just looked at trying to improve the movement in and through the corridor, improving safety and integrating frontage and backage road concepts that would allow you to continue flowing north and south locally while still being able to access area along US 1 when they close it to direct access when they turn into a freeway. Next slide. Our next chapter was roadway and freight. We ended up with almost 360 roadway projects altogether, split out by different improvement types, including widenings and new locations shown here, as well as some access management, grade separation, and intersection realignments to improve safety and visibility. After public engagement in a couple of months, we added in 19 new projects, and we refined a number of other existing projects. And then, as you can see here on the left, the bottom left, some key projects from Rolesville include the Burlington Mills Road widening and realignment, Rogers Road widening, Jones Dairy Road extension, and Fowler Road extension. Next slide. All of our recommendations were then placed in the 3 buckets of priority, near, mid, and long term. So we started with the survey data from the public engagement period and what we heard from stakeholder groups and existing plans. And then we factored in future volume and capacity, what's needed in the future, development density and project time frame from the previous Metropolitan Transportation Plan. You can see here on the map, for example, the near-term projects are in green here. Next slide. So moving on to transit, first mile and last mile solutions is one of the low-hanging fruits that we really talked about. Micromobility is a really popular idea too right now, such as the Northeast Wake County microtransit study that's moving forward. Increasing frequency and weekend service improvements are also really cost-effective near-term solutions as ridership and demand increases as well. Some midterm examples include some additional extensions like extending bus service to Franklinton and Youngsville. Support for passenger rail in the northern corridor through the S line is still progressing, and really a key transit recommendation for this study. And then a circulator route between the Nice towns and Wake County was also an important connection to provide access to areas that don't currently have bus service. So there could be portions of this circulator that could be implemented more quickly than others, such as circulator service between Wake Forest and Rolesville that has been discussed. And then last, we have a East Trans rail line through Knightdale, Wendell, and Zebulon that's still a really big interest in eastern Wake County. Next slide. And then the last mode we're going to talk about here is walking and biking maps, which, you know, the conversation really revolved around connectivity. We really wanted to demonstrate flexibility, so we broke the projects into 4 categories. We have a complete street urban that addresses the need to retrofit where we can to serve all modes. We have a street redesign on-road that looks at improvements within the existing curb. And then the third one we received the most feedback about because it really improves safety in that street redesign off-road, which includes improvements outside of the curb, but still inside of the right-of-way. So think like a side path providing separation from vehicles next to the road. And then finally, greenways are those trails that are outside of the right-of-way. They could follow along utility easements, for example. Key projects in Rolesville on the bicycle pedestrian side include the Main Street Complete Streets project, the Toms Creek Greenway, and then the Eastern Bypass Greenway. Next slide. So throughout the project, we really heard over and over throughout all of our virtual meetings that we had for the public engagement period that people want more walkable and bikeable communities. And we really think, you know, COVID had a lot to do with that. People are getting outside a lot more and just enjoying the amenities that they have in their backyards. So regional connectivity is important, but people also just want to walk down the street or to the school or the store. So with the recommendations, we generated new projects from open house feedback. We identified locations where even just a small improvement like a sidewalk gap can make a big difference to a neighborhood. The study ended up with almost 300 walking and biking recommendations, and then we prioritized them similar to the roadway while still trying to maintain flexibility. I also want to add here the bicycle pedestrian accommodations were also explored and included where applicable for all of the roadway project recommendations as well. Next slide. And if y'all are on the same slide I am, you should be at the last slide with my email address here. So I want to go full circle here from when we started this project, showing this graphic on the right at the bottom. I want to reiterate how all of the local land use and transportation plans, and this is what Jason was talking about earlier, as well as area studies such as this one, they flow up into informing the prioritization of projects that are really based on funding for Campo's region-wide metropolitan transportation plan, which is actually in the update process now, so I included the link there. So we made sure to incorporate any plans that have happened since 2014 to make sure it's the most up-to-date line work and network within Rolesville in the area. The NEAS update workbook, including an appendix with a list of all the recommendations, the public engagement summary, and the policy guidebook are all up for review on Campo's website now. And there will be a public comment period starting in July with the study to be taken to Campo's TCC and executive board for consideration of endorsement in August. We're conducting final board briefings now like this. So we're really just looking for your endorsement of the NEAS update study to be considered in future planning efforts, including the 2050 MTP. My contact information is here, so feel free to reach out with any questions or comments. And once again, thank you all for all of your help on public engagement and all of your input as we were going throughout this study. And I'll be glad to take any questions now.
Does the board have any questions?
I have a couple questions.
Good.
I just want to know, thank you for that, Brandon. I wanted to know what determines when you decide to build a new road versus improving the roads and repairing or expanding the roads? Because living in the Triangle for over 20 years, we need some more roads. So I just want to know kind of what is that sweet spot where you go, hey, we need a new road versus let's expand this road? Just trying to understand that.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I guess I would have to say when, we take all of the local plans and we put it into our traffic model, our Triangle Regional model that we use. So that's really the exercise that we're doing now with this Metropolitan Transportation Plan, and we're planning out to 2050. So those projects are kind of broken out into decades. There'll be the first decade, second decade, and third decade, and then we have a comprehensive transportation plan that holds pretty much everything else that's unfunded. So as far as new locations as opposed to widenings, we really just take a look at the model and see, if it looks like a certain roadway is over capacity, would it make sense to add a parallel road next to that, or is it possible to widen that particular road that's over capacity now? So I guess the answer to that is really just we take a look at the traffic model, and this Northeast Area Study update is a chance for us to kind of look at a smaller area. It's obviously not a small area because it's 11 municipalities, but it zooms in to be able to take a closer look at the model and be able to analyze like specific roads that when you're looking at a regional level, you may not be able to.
Got it. Thank you for that. And then one other question I have, this is totally personal. I used to commute to the park, and for the life of me, and maybe this is not for you, maybe it's for DOT, but I want to put it out there anyway. Is it possible to get some paint and add to 540 no trucks in the left lane like they have on I-40 to help with traffic?
That is a good question, and I'm not sure. You're saying on
540.
540? Mm-hmm. I can definitely check on that with NCDOT and at least provide a contact for who would be able to answer that question for sure.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
No problem. Thank you.
Other questions from the board? I have a couple, and I'll try to make it in one big question here. I saw Lewisburg is not one of the communities in the study. It says unincorporated parts of Franklin County and Bunn. So I see Bunn's in there, and I was just kind of wondering why Lewisburg is excluded, because there's more and more people in that area there, and that community is using 401, which is our main corridor to get to Raleigh. And that brings me, I guess, to finalize the question is, and I'm not an engineer, but I am a traveler to Raleigh sometimes in the mornings. That Neuse River crossing on 401 is just getting worse and worse and worse. It appeared to me 540 was put on the wrong side of the river, really. It'd been a lot better if it was on this side of Neuse River, because you got 401 and even Lewisburg now coming by the bypass is more and more people going up there. So you got all the 401 traffic, you got the Mitchell Mill traffic, and you got that other one, Legan Mills, I think, that funnels into one intersection that has to get over the river there. Is there a magic bullet or a silver bullet that's going to fix that? Because I don't see that getting any better, and I don't see any of this other road stuff makes a lot of difference if you can't get across there. And I'm not sure, what the solution is, but unless Neuse River, and that's probably not part of your study, but I think most of this middle section of your study funnels into that one place, because I would think a lot of people that's in this area that you're studying work in the Triangle area or either downtown Raleigh or in Wake County. And I don't know unless if something's going to be done there, how it's going to get any better, only get worse as we develop in this community here.
Yeah, you're right. That's definitely a tough area. For your first part of the question, so regarding Lewisburg, they aren't currently a member of Campo. They were a part of our stakeholder oversight team for the Northeast Area Study Update, as well as the RPO in that area. They're a member of the RPO over there. So we were in close coordination with them with the Northeast Area Study Update. As far as why they're not a member of Campo, I think it really depends on the census. So, we're looking at the boundaries now once the census data comes out as to if some of those communities that are kind of just outside of Campo's boundary, if they're going to be in Campo's urbanized area and need to be added to Campo's area. So I guess we'll see after this if that happens, but that's the reason they aren't exactly a member of Campo, but we did include them in all of the meetings and tried to make sure we included any recommendations that were kind of on the border to make sure to coordinate on those. And then the Neuse River crossing, that's a really good point. And as we were looking through the recommendations, the border of the Northeast Area Study Update, the boundary actually is east of the Neuse River. So I went through and went along the Neuse River at each of the roadway crossings to make sure we had appropriate recommendations there. That's definitely an area we were paying attention to as far as the volumes. It's tough. There's not really a silver bullet, but where our traffic model is currently going out to 2050 with the MTP. So I'll definitely make a note to kind of just look along the Neuse River where you're talking about and see if there's anything additional that needs to be taken a look at in the future with the volumes that are coming out of the model. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, I think so. It's I know we put a lot of time here in Rolesville in roads, and I know your study here is putting a lot of time in it. But if there's, if that's a bottleneck, it's just going to hinder all these efforts we're doing. I mean, right now, people coming from Lewisburg, they zip around Rolesville in 5 minutes, but then they hit a dead stop when they get to Forest Road, and it's just nowhere to go. And I know, can't go back and redesign, 540, but it would be a big difference if 540 is on this side of Neuse River, like it is in the rest of the county. I mean, the rest of the county expands pretty close to the county lines, except for this northern section here, northeastern section, and it looks like to me there's not a good way to, and Capel is not a way. Capel is even worse. Capel Boulevard is in the same boat. It's located on the wrong side of the river to 540. So it's the same boat, and they're already probably in worse conditions we are. And some of that traffic comes over here just because they can't get through over there. So I just, I think as this area grow north of Neuse River, something's going to have to be done, and I don't know what the solution is, but
Like
it's only going to get worse.
Like a true bypass where you could bypass that area if you don't need to go straight into downtown Raleigh, because you're right, once you pass 540, it kind of breaks up a little bit until you get to Capitol, and then everybody merges together. But yeah, I agree, that is tough. And I make that drive too. So
Right.
Yeah.
relate.
Yeah, we definitely have a lot of our widenings are feeding into over 540 in the Neuse River right there. So those projects are in there in the future, but yeah, like you're saying, the traffic's going to keep increasing. So even widening, that's kind of what the model's for, to tell us, what will it look like once the roadway is widened. So we'll definitely take a look at that.
Thank you.
I just have one final question. Just curious about the northeast and northern communities as far as the municipalities, the connectivity between the two. Because when I look at these maps, there's a lot of, land with no roads for you to travel from, say, Rolesville to Knightdale without either going to 540 or going on back roads. What is the time frame for that? I saw something about it, but what is the time frame or the projected time frame on that? connectivity there?
I think it would probably depend on which connections, like between which towns and which roadways. It's really just going to depend on. So what we do is we have our whole universe of projects here that we're going to have in the Metropolitan Transportation Plan. So, we're going to feed all of these projects in the Northeast Area Study update our network. And then we run the model and we kind of see which projects rise to the top as far as cost benefit analysis. Our biggest bang for the buck and would most likely get funded at the state level and be able to get some federal funding as well. So I guess that's kind of the answer. It really just depends on which roads. I know that even larger concern, connectivity was a major talking point throughout this study. Roadway for sure, but bicycle pedestrian as well. We spent a lot of time on the bicycle pedestrian network connecting the different towns because there was a lot of gaps and people wanted to be able to travel between the towns without having to get on the road. So that might actually help some of that as well in the future.
Gotcha.
And just I'll add on to that, Commissioner Sutton. I think it's important to note as well, like the state uses a very data-driven approach, and Campo has been very successful in securing projects, kind of using that approach to kind of what rises to the top, what's the best cost-benefit analysis. And a lot of those secondary roads statewide aren't competing for funds. It's going to be your interstates and your U.S. Highways that compete for the funds. And so what it's really important is as development comes online is for the development community to continue to assist in, mitigating traffic concerns, as well as, the local municipalities through either bond referendums or the LAP program through Campo, kind of filling in the gaps. And that's kind of how the whole network will be complete, because I wouldn't feel honest to y'all saying, those secondary roads will compete in statewide prioritization, because they likely will not. That's just the way it works, is they really prioritize the highways in that system. But we've been really successful in this region getting a lot of those funds, so it kind of knocks off the top of the list. And so you're starting getting down where some of the major secondary roads might start to compete, but those are going to be, they're already so at capacity that, most people avoid them if they can, so.
I know, they go to 540.
Yep.
All righty, thank you.
And so I'll just add our kind of plan moving forward for this. So this is going to be the board briefing tonight. So we're at a work session. We're not going to ask for any action tonight, but then come back on July 8th with the resolution on the consent agenda for endorsement of the Northeast Area Study. And what I also want to do is encourage all of you, as well as anybody who's watching, to participate through July, make your public comment, and make it known, where you have additional concerns or where additional study might need to be happening, so that, they can complete the study and make sure they're taking public comment into consideration as they finalize it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep. Thank you, Brandon.
Thank you all.
Thanks, Brandon. Thank you.
All right, thanks. Appreciate that. Good presentation. Next item, we got a request for proposal for small area plan for feasibility study for economic corridor. And I think I see you up there already, Michael. So it's all yours.
All right, thank you, Mayor, and good evening, Board of Commissioners. So yeah, I'm here tonight just to get the board's feedback and input on a proposal to solicit firms to conduct a small area plan and a feasibility study for a future commercial, and economic development corridor. Now that the community transportation plan has been updated and approved and the new LDO is in place, it's time to move forward and determine the feasibility of future commercial, industrial uses along the proposed Fowler Road extension. And just to kind of, I think it's imperative that the town begin to identify available land for commercial industrial development, just to diversify our tax base. This is something we've called out in our economic development plan and also the town strategic plan. And just to kind of get us thinking about sort of the end in mind and start to visualize the end in mind, I just threw up some recent major relocation announcements from some companies. And again, these companies, located where they did in part because there was land available, somewhat suitable, development-ready land to move to. And so we might call this land product. And something right now that Rolesville lacks, I guess, this land product that, that we can have in our economic development toolkit to market to prospective companies and site selection specialists and developers. And so along those lines too, I just wanted to pull up a quick video, again, getting us to think about the end in mind. Let me see if this will work with the sound. Just an example here of some marketable land that Sampson County has in their toolbox right now. Let's see here. So just kind of an example to, again, help us visualize where this small area plan can take us, and I think that's the first step, is just to pave that way. Uh-oh. Next video. Here we go. I did also want to mention, so Wake County frequently receives requests for information from prospective companies looking for sites and buildings in the county, and these requests get shared with each municipality for us to respond to. And I just wanted to kind of throw up some examples of the types of requests that we might receive. And they're somewhat confidential. A lot of times code names are used for the projects, and I took these from a few years back, where you can kind of see, what are some things companies are asking for or looking for? Building criteria, 60,000 square feet, how much percentage of office space, what's the ceiling height? Are they looking at multi-tenant, single tenant, purchase or lease options, room for expansion, things like that. Here's another example. An advanced manufacturing assembly company looking to bring 300 jobs somewhere, investing $70 million to $100 million, and they're looking for an existing building of approximately 400,000 to 500,000 square feet. Again, you can see some of these other requirements. So just again, kind of giving us some examples here. What the county does is kind of track this information and track these requests that come in, and looking at the last year, so January 2020 to 2021, you can kind of see some of these projects, and they can provide us with this data, what is being sought after in terms of, again, average acreage, square footage, ceiling height. It gives us that, gives us an idea of what companies are looking for when they're looking to relocate and what they need. You can see here projects with real estate requests, there were 78 in the last time period from January 2020 to January 2021. 56% of those are asking for an existing building, not just land. And then another 21% are asking for both land and an existing building. And looking at all those projects that have requested existing buildings, about 47% we're looking for industrial space. So we'll have that knowledge. We'll work with Wake County to help us with that as we go through this process of doing the small area plan. And again, just to mention some of the efforts that the town's been involved with so far. Wake County does have a site assessment program, and since I've been here the last 2 years, we participated in this program. We've submitted 3 sites so far, and the county evaluated those sites. And based on site characteristics, infrastructure, they look at things as, how close are, what's the proximity to an airport, major highways, and things like that, existing infrastructure, utilities. And so they give us a score. It's something municipalities can look at. It's just shared internally. And then it's just, something as a guide that we can look at and say, well, what do we need to do to improve this site? Or what else does this site need? Or what was lacking with such and such a site? So we have participated in that. We're going to pause this year as we're embarking on this small area plan, which will hopefully give us some new product and new ideas for sites in the future. And again, Wake County will help us along with this process. And so when we're thinking about a small area study, what area are we referring to and why this area? So I have some maps here. I know it's probably hard to see maybe on the screen or electronically, so. All right. I made some copies. You guys just to help out a little bit.
Thank you.
So the study area we're looking at right now consists of about 16 parcels. Shown here on that first map that's more colorful is the future land use map from the 2017 comprehensive plan. And we can see that some parcels have been designated as business park. Over there, that kind of, I don't know what we call that, brick, red, they're both kind of rust color, but 11, 12, 13, 14, and 16 are that business park designation. And then we see some others that have this mixed-use neighborhood designation, and that's the darker red. This was the only area in town really designated as business park, and apart from the Walbrook parcels where the Walbrook development is, this is also the only area in town where we kind of have a mixed-use neighborhood designation. But again, this isn't the current zoning, but the future vision kind of laid out in our comprehensive plan. The current zoning for all of these parcels is RL, or residential low density. And this is all outside of town limits right now. So this is all in our ETJ, just outside of town limits.
So when you say mixed use, that's not including commercial or anything like that? That's just,
Yes, it could, commercial and residential. So you could have a mix of commercial, residential, similar to like the cobblestone.
you said you could,
Yep.
but when it's on this map, it doesn't mean it's going to happen. It can be all, mixed
Oh.
use, the way we define mixed use, it can be all residential then. Is that right?
I would hope not.
Because that looks like to me that big area that is now the point is all mixed use, but I don't think they had
Right.
much commercial in there.
Right, and they don't. They did, I guess it's not part of the development, that 15 acres up at the top corner at one point was part of that.
Yeah.
I
That's
think-
what I'm kind of confused on the definition of mixed use, because I would think mixed use is kind of like cobblestone.
Right, yes,
Or maybe Walbrook.
right. And again, this is from 2017 where this was the vision. So the zoning didn't actually take place. The town never came around to zoning that. Instead, it was a PUD, I believe, for the point to go in there. And I don't know if the point development got approved before 2017. So I don't know the history there, but I think the intent was that, as per the comp plan, that would be mixed-use development.
And
And it-
mixed use means, again, what is?
Right.
Well,
I think
if you look at block one, the big one, the top half of it is being proposed, and it's all residential, I think. So I guess that's what confuses me in my mind. What does mixed use mean? Because I see mixed use on here. I see other things, being proposed, I guess.
Yeah. No,
Mr. Mayor, under the new LDO, the board has tightened the definition of mixed use severely from what it was under the UDO. Particularly back in 2017, the language of the UDO allowed for a mixed use characterization for a project, even if it may potentially have had no commercial at all. It had to have other public uses or institutional uses, which in some cases, most notoriously, may include just a greenway, for example. But that is no longer permitted under the current LDO, and that would not qualify. And the PUD is no longer an active zoning district in Rolesville. Now, the map is our comp plan rather than either our, that's the overall vision, but it will be the LDO that brings whatever the current regulatory vision is into effect, if that helps.
So when we see something going forward for 15, that's a pretty square little block there. It's going to be true mixed use with what?
It's going to be whatever this board chooses to allow the property owner to zone it to.
Based on what it already is in the
But I-
LDO right now.
I guess that's where I'm hung up, because it's already a long ways in the process before this board actually sees it.
So to the extent that a property is not properly zoned, that is, if it's zoned medium residential, or it's zoned, much of our ETJ is, what's the abbreviation we chose for low-density residential, RL? RL. So unless the property owner wishes to move forward under the RL designation, that property owner will need to start with the board and seek a rezoning.
And that's done before it goes through tech review and plan
Correct.
submitted and all that kind of
Correct.
stuff?
All before that.
But don't we have this whole conditional zoning? That was the whole caveat that they.
Correct. That's at the beginning. Everything starts with zoning, or will start with zoning going forward,
Yeah.
unless the owner
Yeah.
is happy with the zoning they have.
And see, that's kind of where I'm a little bit fuzzy, because I was thinking, we set all those parameters. It had to be certain part of commercials had to be done in conjunction with residential. It was certain percentages we was kind of saying that had to take place, right, in the new LDO.
Talking about with mixed use,
Mixed use, yeah, mixed use.
in the new world.
And maybe this mixed use is not.
That property is not, so that property was approved under, so if it's already has an approved plan, those are vested rights.
I don't think, does it?
So 15 does not, what is the current zoning of that site?
RL.
Currently, it is a low-density, single-family detached neighborhood, and if that's all the property owner ever wants to do, it will never come before the board until the day it comes for subdivision approval for a low-density residential subdivision.
But yeah, that's why the PUD was problematic.
Go ahead, I sidetracked you a little bit there.
No, not at all. And right now, all of these properties, except for number 7, which is the new Baptist Church, are outside of town limits. So there would be an annexation process as well with these properties.
Wait, all of them except 7 are outside the town limits?
Yes.
Of that rust color?
Yep.
So wait, where's 5?
What about 6?
I'm asking about 5.
I'm just asking because it says News Baptist also.
Yeah, 6 is the little, it's kind of like,
But that's not annexed in yet? Isn't that where the,
oh, yeah, it is.
it is?
Where the church is.
Yep,
Okay,
si-
both
si-
of those?
6 and 7.
Okay,
Because it's like a panhandle of, 6 is a panhandle of 7 that just is a little, like,
I got you, okay.
And I was gonna ask about 5?
you know, the
Same
state of
thing?
Oklahoma. 5 is also, yeah, not part of town limits.
On this side of the street though? I mean, on this side of the bypass?
Yeah, that's over by the church, Michelle, before you get to the
5.
church.
3, yeah,
It's
3.
not on this side of the bypass.
It's on the other
It's on
side.
the other side.
far side.
Yes.
Wait a minute, I gotta turn my little map around.
And here, with less colors, I gave you that other map too, with just the blue, with the study area just kind of highlighted in blue. Just to have a little bit, a clearer of a view. And, you know, I just wanted to point out as well that you can see that the proposed Fowler Road extension running through the study area. So all the way to the right is existing Fowler Road coming into
that the
Rolesville
blue?
Road at parcel
Oh,
16.
there it is.
And then the extension that is being proposed is mentioned in the recently adopted community transportation plan, has it running, you can see there at the bottom of parcel 15 through 13, 11, and then comes up all the way through parcel 7, which is the new.
Yes, not there right now.
Just out of curiosity, number 8, is that split between,
Yes, number 8 is a little bit of the parcel is above South Main Street there, and then it's right there where the number 8 is, and then south of the bypass, that square is a continuation of 8. It's all
so-
one parcel.
But it's not annexed in, only a part of 8 is. Is that correct?
Right now, none of 8 is.
None of 8 is?
I have a question. When you look at Fowler Road, why wouldn't you cut it off at Jonesville Road? Rather than take it all the way through like it, why wouldn't you just cut it off, turn right on Jonesville Road and go into the bypass? And save the money?
Well, okay, you're answering your feasibility study, that's already start, maybe.
Okay.
And secondly,
The church, too.
seven's one of your commercial
I
areas.
was gonna say the church, too.
And therefore, you know, I think it's high priority to study that area and see if it's even feasible what it is. So that area probably has more feasibility from 6 and 7 to Jonesville than some. I'm not willing to put money on that because I'm going to wait for the study, but that's an important study area, I think.
I mean, you're gonna have to buy easements.
We recognize, and that's what the studies can tell us.
Yeah, and if you cut off at Jonesville Road, you don't have to buy any more easement from that point on. But again, this study will tell us. Okay.
I'm sorry, can we go back to 8 for a second? Because isn't that, all of number 8 is owned by, yeah, regardless, isn't that just one piece of property though? But yet it's, part of
Split.
it's annexed and part of it is not?
None of it's annexed, split
None of
by
it's
2 roads.
annexed.
Split by 2 roads,
Right.
none of it's annexed.
I've never seen,
Eminent domain.
Yeah, a lot of these
Road
parcels
right in your
were
yard.
probably split when the bypass was built because it, you know, kind of came through and split a lot of these parcels.
Rolesville enjoys a peculiarity as well that 401 was annexed into Rolesville.
right, so 401 was, whatever properties it divided, it didn't matter? Whatever
Correct. It
properties
was just the General Assembly identified only the right-of-way itself.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Yeah, actually, 8 is 3 pieces. It's that bottom piece too.
Because isn't that,
So, you know, so we asked the question, you know, why this general area? And, you know, you think about the restrictions of the watershed to the east, the proximity here to the major highway, 401, and with residential development really filling in to the north and going towards Wake Forest, this area presented itself as sort of a top choice for a study to determine the potential for industrial use. And again, as our comp plan states, have, reserving this as sort of a future business park area, and then also our community transportation plan has designated this area as an employment center. So that's the proposed study area.
I have a question based on the video that you shared from Sampson County, which I loved. So do you annex these as you go? Like, they were marketing that, like, these are the areas that are available. Have those been annexed, or are they annexed along the way? Because how do you market it if you haven't?
Right, I think.
I'm just curious how that
Yeah.
works.
And I think that's what the study will tell us, at what point we would want to do that. How does the town interact with these landowners? Part of the
Gotcha.
process will be communicating with these landowners.
Okay.
Partnering with them, talking to them about the town's vision for this area and seeing if they're in agreement, or maybe they do not want to participate.
Okay, so you kind of get them on, I would love to know how, did you talk to Sampson County?
No. I
Okay, I'd love to see how they're marketing that, because that video, it seems comprehensive, like they're pointing out these specific areas. Just trying to understand that, because that'd be great.
Probably
to
highly
have that.
probable, Ms. Sutton, that in my experience, also, I had a large industrial park owned by one or two property owners who worked with the town putting in the infrastructure, and then already had the designated zoning industrial, and therefore they're marketing it as industrial properties and parcels available. So there's a lot, what you saw in that Sampson, there's a lot of groundwork. You saw there's already a half
Okay.
dozen
Gotcha.
to 8 business industries there. These are the balance of that industrial area that is probably ready, infrastructure ready. May have some deficiencies in some spots, but they're marketing them. So they have look like a wide variety of size of parcels, probably a wide variety of shovel-ready opportunities. I'm willing to bet most all of it's zoned properly already
Oh, gotcha,
and annexed.
gotcha.
And that's probably 5 to 8 years worth of work, at least.
It was pretty, though.
It takes somebody who comes, or a developer who comes, or a town who comes and starts something, and then the rest follow. But it takes an effort to get that to that point.
Gotcha. And then rezoning it to industrial for landowners is not as controversial as rezoning it to residential? I'm just making sure that I'm understanding it.
Right.
Because I know rezoning farmland to residential is not ideal for a landowner, right? Because of the property taxes?
So I think, if I may, I would hope that the study is going to talk to us
Gonna tell us
about
some of that.
how does that process happen.
Okay,
And typically, it's still going to be, the end product of this, we would hope, is going to be something that says, what's feasible, and how is it feasible? And how would you approach landowners to consider potentially thinking about
right,
selling, developing, zoning, all those things, to what could be appropriate feasibility in this area, from commercial to industrial.
gotcha.
It still is a requirement of the property owner to do the petitioning and annex. But they may, I would suspect, out of this study, there's going to be an analysis of the highest and best use. And they may come out and say, you know what, if industrial might be this high value, that's going to make the property owner pretty interested in that potential
Gotcha.
use. And that's the groundwork. That's why it's so important for us to help lay that groundwork. We can't rely upon these property owners
Sure.
who have owned it for years to know that.
Right,
What's really important for us as a community is kind of help start to frame the framework of which their property could be used in the future, to let them then do the analysis and start working towards, if they're interested, some solutions to their future.
so it sounds like you're saying we need a feasibility study.
And that's what this, yeah. Well, and you look at, when Michael and I, we've been talking about this for a year, when we look at it, we don't have a whole lot, right? And so we need minimally, we need to test and verify this corridor. And then we need to see what that says, and then we determine, one of the determinations you're gonna also need to come out of this study is, do you need more? And where, potentially? Is this enough? How do you get that started and such? So, but since we have the basis of your information already, by plans you've already adopted, this lays the groundwork of something that we can get started on. I didn't mean to step in, but.
Thank you, and thanks, town attorney, for. And I hope we can have that conversation too, to ask on Friday, Holly Springs, to talk a little bit about what were some of the steps they, did, and how did they get to where they're at with attracting, recently Fujifilm to come to their town. And so I think it's a process years in the making, and they, everyone I talk to talks about talking to these companies
Right.
5-10 years ago, having that first conversation before a relocation announcement finally took place. And so,
I'm good. I think we need a feasibility study. I'm convinced.
what's a good segue into what a feasibility study consists of, or what a small area plan consists of? So these are just some of the plan elements. Again, talking with the property owners, incorporating their input, getting Wake County to participate as well, and learning best practices from Wake County. I think there'd be a review of existing site conditions, needs, restraints. What do we have out there in terms of infrastructure? What would be the, what kind of zoning process or rezoning process do we want to go through? Again, looking at transportation and access. Where exactly should that Fowler Road extension go? And then land assemblage. I think, maybe that whole area is not going to work, but maybe there's 20 acres over here that's going to work, and then 38 acres over there, and figuring out, or how can you put together 2 or 3 parcels to make one big, maybe mega site where we want to attract a larger company coming in. And then also, of course, the topography and looking at environmental considerations, what's out there. We did this with the Main Street study as well, and you see these a lot when, 540, the study for 540, making sure they're not disturbing any estuaries or anything like that. But so we're going to want to look at that too. And it's really a corridor study of the proposed Fowler Road extension, but also that market analysis to determine the highest and best use, and determine potential for and the feasibility of industrial development out there, or different types of commercial development. So we want to make sure that's a part of it to tell us what's doable out there. And then also, just based on that, recommendations from this firm for the future use. What is going to be the best use? And then also, finally, sort of a roadmap or a guide with implementation strategies. Give us the step-by-step process of how we can start to transition this area, which right now is zoned residential low density outside of our town limits in the ETJ. And so how can we turn this into something that will be able to support commercial and industrial development someday? What steps do we need to take? And I think that, the town will use the results of this small area study to kind of identify suitable land and just to inform our decision-making process regarding negotiating with landowners in the future, and investing in due diligence and site preparation and things like that. So that's all I have for tonight, and if there are any other questions, just wanted to get everyone's feedback on
So
moving
Michael,
forward.
would a study include, I guess, cost estimates on how it's going to get it to where it's shovel-ready, I reckon, or however you want to call it, which is putting in roads, utility lines, all that stuff to make it feasible.
Yes, yep. We'll include that in there as well.
Getting it shovel-ready.
Yeah,
So it's expensive.
because, I don't know what the Fowler Road extension costs, but I don't think it's going to be cheap.
And just some estimates too on what kind of due diligence do we want to invest in to test the land, see what's suitable, see how suitable it is, see how shovel-ready we can get it, so that we could market it to potential.
Are those things that
companies.
Campo would assist us with when we're to that point?
Campo's more, I think, in the transportation realm with
Or
the,
region.
with the Fowler Road extension. But firms are out there that, that would probably assist us with a consultant to kind of show us these steps we would need to take. And also that there are programs out there. The state has a certified sites program. I believe it's depending on how much due diligence you want to do, it's anywhere from maybe $25,000 to $50,000 to kind of do some due diligence and research. And they have a checklist where you got to tick off a number of things, a geotech report, environmental assessment, proper infrastructure's in place, and things like that, where you get it up to a level where the state will certify it as a site, and then we could market that as a certified site across the state and across the country. And I think Duke Energy also has a similar program for site readiness,
Really?
where they help with that. So I think, yeah, well, the first step is a feasibility study, and then I hope from that, some of those recommendations might come out of this study to say, hey, yeah, you guys it would make sense to start on this pathway to do the certified sites program.
So you said that for 2 years you submitted sites in the site assessment, is that correct? Was this plot of land ever one of those? So do you already have any feedback on that? Well, first, I guess my question is,
Yep.
was this plot of land ever submitted in that?
Yep.
Program.
So the 3 sites that we submitted, one was 15, parcel 15. The other was parcel 8. And the other is not on this map, but it's at the corner of Rogers Road and Granite Falls Boulevard. There's the 22 acres of greenfield across from the SECU, the State Employees Credit Union. So we submitted those 3 sites at the time, and just got some general feedback. All the sites scored kind of middle range. We hadn't taken that next step to talk to those landowners to see if they would like to partner with us on industrial development. But, being in that general area, it was close to infrastructure. We're close to 401 and we're close to 540.
8 would be industrial?
Industrial, commercial.
Okay. And across from SECU, industrial?
Right.
I don't think so.
Right. So,
Okay.
I mean,
Commercial.
Right. At the time, we were, looking at the commercially zoned,
You-
properties that we have in town, and
Scaring me there, Michael. Industrial plant?
but
Okay.
that's why.
Let me toss in here that with the new LDO, we have 2 industrial districts now, 3 if you count the general commercial district. So you have general industrial, GI, and then you have business, industry, and technology, or the BT district. BT is probably what a lot of communities call light industrial, which may be perhaps what much of this might be marketed as. And my guess is, as this progresses, we will be revisiting the principal use table to make sure that the zoning that we would support has the types of uses that we would like to see on a project that we're partnering on. The principal use table was developed without perhaps this specific idea in mind. So we may be revisiting, I would guess, that principal use table, as it is in some ways perhaps both too broad and too narrow as to where you'd want to go down the road.
And just one clarifying question. When we go to market for this vendor to help us with this feasibility study, I'm assuming we're going to get several vendors and not just go to one, because I think we need to make sure we're diversifying our vendors, and I hope we interview at least 3 before we make a decision on who will do the work.
And I suspect it's going to be a really interesting group that's going to put in, because it's going to be multidiscipline. So it's going to be, it could even be a collaboration of groups that come together on this, be my suspicion. So I'm kind of looking forward to see who puts in, because I think it will be a wide variety of folks, groups.
Yeah, I think it'll be an exciting project to get started on this.
I just want to emphasize that there's women and minority firms out there that can do this work, I'm sure. So I hope to see some in the pool.
So what do we think this project costs?
So we put in the budget 40,000 for this year, this next fiscal year, starting July 1st.
Was that a deep breath?
I don't know.
You think it's going to be way more than that?
That's
think-
what I'm
yeah.
thinking too.
And there's different levels, so yeah, we'll have to think about how.
We may need to come back to you. We'll let you know, but that's what we
Doesn't
put in
it
the
seems
budget.
like you're gonna have to come back? So do you lowball it first to
No,
soften the
no,
blow,
I
or
think,
just
I think as we put more thought in tonight's, and where we're going on the RFP, it probably grew a bit, because quite frankly, we just kind of looked at the Fowler extension, but now we've thrown in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 parcels too. The numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, because we think there could be some natural connectivity to those parcels. So, I don't know. We'll see, but it's probably potentially low.
Can I just ask again about number 15? So what is the plan for 15? Lot 15 here?
That, in the future land use plan, the vision was mixed-use neighborhood, so a mix of uses. Could be some residential, some commercial. But right now, it's not annexed into town, and it's just designated as residential low density in our new LDO.
Yeah.
And it's land.
I may be the only one, but I would love us to, in one workshop, is get an understanding of what mixed use is. Because when I see a subdivision submitted, to me, that's not mixed use. I mean, it may be, but that's why I would like to be educated on just what, if we hear mixed use, what are we talking about, you know?
Sometimes I feel like I leave the meeting thinking it's one thing, but then when it comes back like something like this, I'm like, okay, I must have fell asleep on that part.
Yeah,
All based on the comp plan, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
Which is from 2017.
That's correct.
And as our attorney mentioned, I think.
which is not the law.
Right.
It's just like all of our other guides and plans and proposals, but it's the laws, the town code, and the LDO.
So the LDO kind of lays on top of the comp plan for the specifics. Is that correct?
The LDO is the law, and the comp plan is your announcement, changing from time to time, as to where you would like to see that law go.
Okay.
Think of the comp plan perhaps as your mission statement for a corporation, and then you enact resolutions and take action consistent with that. Usually, from time to time, special circumstances arise, and you may move in a different direction. And if you do, you have to explain why you did, but you're not bound by your comp plan. In fact, your comp plan automatically amends itself whenever you move in a different direction.
Your LDO is the law, your comp plan's a dream.
I disagree. I don't think it's a dream. I think it's a guide.
Guidance, yeah.
Well,
I think when someone comes in with 15 to our planning department and they say, we want to put a subdivision there, I think guidance ought to be said, you know, this is mixed use, which is different than a subdivision. You know what I'm saying?
I understand that.
And if we
But-
don't,
But if a big box comes here and they're gonna bring 200 jobs, and they wanna go in an area out here and, close to this, to the Beltway, okay? All right, and we think, well, it's worth it for 200 jobs. That can change our, dream or whatever, because our comp plan, because a lot of stores like to be in the shadow of big boxes because of traffic, and it could change that area. It just depends. I'm surprised we haven't been approached by a big box yet, anyway. But again, only time will tell. I didn't mean to say a dream as being anything negative, but that's just the way I look at it.
But it has
If
a
it
lot of
always-
flexibility.
Yes,
A lot
yes.
of
Yeah, but if it
flexibility.
always changes and you don't have that comp plan, where does that leave you? You know what I mean? Each time you're coming through, somebody's bringing 100 jobs, somebody's bringing 300 jobs, and you keep changing that plan, that guide, where does that leave you as a town?
That's where you're looking at your LDO.
Yeah.
That's what they're basing on. The developers are going to look at the LDO.
But if they're still looking at it and coming back for a change, what does it matter?
We don't have to approve it.
Conditional zoning.
There you
See?
go. Yeah. We don't have to approve it. It's like Dave said, the LDO is the law.
Right.
And I guess that's where conversations come in. What do we really want Rolesville look like? What does
Exactly.
Rolesville, what are we hearing that Rolesville, the future is going to look like here?
I'll throw in another editorial comment. There are communities where they like to think of a zoning petition as something analogous to a member of the community coming forward to the podium and suggesting that there should be a leash law, or suggesting that there should be limitations made to hours of construction or to the speed limits on subdivision roads. That's what a zoning petition is. It's just, hey, I got an idea that I think would be better than what the law currently is. What do you guys think? It's nothing more than that.
So what you all think? You ready to see what happens on this? Do you
I think we should
embark on
pursue
this
it.
effort, or
Gotta keep moving forward.
I'm good.
make sure they're all good?
Yeah.
We need it.
I think we need to figure out where we're going to go with commercial industrial.
And we do, and if we don't, we're gonna stay the bedroom
Where we are.
community for Raleigh, Wake Forest, RTP.
What is this one right here, same thing, mixed use?
Yeah, I'm just confused. I really need some guidance, I think, because.
Do we have a definition that we could read? For mixed use?
I think
To
all
clarify?
the mixed use.
I know
is
Jason wants to
commercial.
jump up here and
Can
do
be
this.
commercial. I mean, I'm not,
I'm surprised he sat
I'm not understanding.
Yeah, he's been looking to get up. I've been seeing him.
So the comprehensive plan, the way I would see this is kind of your vision, right? What do you want things to look like? And then the LDO is really your tool to do that. And so the comprehensive plan does have a definition for mixed use, and it is, the mixed-use neighborhood is a neighborhood with a mix of uses that offer residents the ability to live, shop, work, and play in one community. The design and scale of development encourages active living through a comprehensive and interconnected network of walkable streets that often support multiple modes of transportation. So it does call for mixed use, different uses, not just residential, in the comprehensive plan. The new LDO has tools to realize that vision, and really good tools to do that. So in lieu of regular zoning districts or mixed-use zoning district where those kind of things could get lost in translation, right? It might allow for some residential, some non-residential, but still have a petitioner allowed to come in with full residential in a mixed-use neighborhood, correct? The LDO actually has tools that are floating zoning districts, so they don't exist anywhere on the map. But there's a town center, an activity center, and a neighborhood mixed-use zoning designation that can be applied that require a certain percentage to be non-residential. And not only that, but that the non-residential must be built before the residential can be complete. So that way you're not left with the residual parcel that said future commercial, right? Because that happens from time to time to meet that mixed-use checkbox, right? So it actually requires it to be built before a subdivision can be built out. So these are really good tools to realize the vision of what a neighborhood mixed-use center is defined as in the comprehensive plan. The kind of the other side of that, the rub, is that right now the marketplace is demanding a lot of residential, right? It's saying the non-residential is not there yet. Where are the rooftops? Where is your non-residential going to go? That is why something like this feasibility study is so important, because you got to know what the market's saying, what is feasible, what can be done as far as commercial uses and industrial uses. Otherwise, you'll be built out as residential, and it kind of is something in hindsight, you're going to say, well, I wish we would have done that. So I think it's really important one, to encourage the use of those tools that are in the LDO. So for neighborhoods that come forward to say, don't we have another way that we can make this work, especially if it's in a neighborhood mixed-use center zoning designation. I also think the LDO defines it a little bit further and says, these are also appropriate at major intersections or other activity centers or other areas where we want to encourage activity. So you're not even as bound by the comprehensive plan where you have a lot of medium density residential future land use classifications. It says, hey, if there's a major intersection, it's appropriate to apply one of these mixed-use floating zoning districts. And so it's a really good tool. In the conversations I've had with the development community since the adoption of the LDO, I've certainly encouraged everyone to take a hard look at that as they're formulating their request for a rezoning to come before this board. So that's kind of where I see things and where the current lay of the land is.
So is Cobblestone and Walbrook, are they both mixed use? How we have it defined?
Correct.
Okay.
They would. There's two different ways to do it, right? So Cobblestone is what you would call vertical mixed use. It's actually got retail on the bottom, residential above. That's vertical mixed use. Walbrook is more what you would call a mixture of uses or horizontal mixed use. So it still meets that definition as you have a place to live, work, shop, all in one community. What's important in that, if you're doing a mixture of uses, is the other part of that definition where it talks about walkable streets and a place where you don't have to drive everywhere, and that it's a good place to be, and people tend to want to gather there and spend time there. And so that's the important part of a mixture of use community. They both would meet that definition, but there's no requirement, even in the LDO, that it's vertical mixed use versus horizontal mixed use. And that's where, when you go to update your comprehensive plan, if the vision of the community as you do your public outreach and the board is for more vertical mixed use, then you want to be very clear in that intention. That way, when you update your LDO following comprehensive plan update, you be very clear that it's vertical mixed use, because that's the tool how you realize that vision. The mixture of uses, I think the important part in this definition is, again, those interconnected streets that are for not just cars, but bicycles, pedestrians, and everybody. That's the important part when you do a mixture of use.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.
Yep.
That was very helpful for me.
Yeah,
Clearer.
it does. Well, we'll see what happens when they come in, but, I mean, I understand, when I see low-density residential, I understand that. Medium-density residential, I understand that. High-density, I understand that. So if I want to do a residential, I can do it in any of those places on this map, just those colors, right? But then we see them showing up in the mixed use too. So that's where, and you say it's okay.
But again, you're not on your zoning map right now. You're on the comp plan map.
Yeah.
Right.
So to know what someone is allowed to do today, we need the zoning map, not the comp plan map.
Well, what I said is, I know what you're saying.
Okay.
To really know what you're doing, you got to rezone it. But somebody come in for 15 with a residential, only a residential neighborhood, then evidently that's okay. If we, as a board, approves that and wants that, that's fine.
It is okay no matter what you choose to do.
Yeah.
And I'm going to bring it back to the study, and the study will talk about highest and best use. So we're not going to say to the consultant or whoever we pick, you got to follow this. We're going to say, here's what it says, but tell us, based upon your input, what you find out, what it should be, the highest and best use. And that's going to really, that's what small area plans are about, is really getting down to ground level and making sure we are getting it right, and then making the modifications in advance, if we need to promote what we want is highest best use. So,
All right. So you got your directions? Okay. Well, thank you, Mike. Well, it was a good presentation, and it would be nice if we can get some type of high-tech industrial, as you call it, or so hopefully we can identify somewhere.
Michael's
that will
working on
work
it.
out. Thank you. Next item, review Parks and Recreation Comprehensive Plan regarding future park sites.
It's more than a 5-minute presentation.
Good evening, Mayor, Commissioners. Appreciate the time this evening. I think this is a great lead-in, talking about comprehensive plans and the guidance they give staff and the board to make decisions to move forward. And that's where a lot of the stuff we're going to talk about this evening really comes from, is from our comprehensive plans and future park plans. So, Michael, thank you for that great lead-in. And a lot of things that he said will be kind of related here when it comes about location of future parklands. What does it do for economics? Is, the studies have shown wherever parklands are increases property value. So just because you're taking land off the tax roll, you're increasing property values around them, which increases taxes as well. So it's kind of a dual role there. So we'll get started. What we're really talking about today is going to be community park sites for future land. The town has really done a great job with what we'll call pocket parks. Those are the parks that are a half acre up to 3 acres. That's what you're seeing a lot of subdivisions put in within their communities. Maybe it's their community center with their pool and they have a tot lot next to it, or volleyball or tennis courts, other amenities like that. So that's more of, you think, that's your pocket parks. The community parks, think Main Street Park, Millbridge Nature Park. Those are more of the size of your community-sized parks where folks are going to spend 2, 3, 4 hours at that park doing different, whatever that facility is, whether, at Main Street Park you have the playgrounds and shelters and the walking trails, the greenway system. It could be in the future, it could be a splash pad, it could be tennis courts and, a tennis center. So those are just some of the ideas of things that future parks could be that we currently don't have as amenities. So that's what we're focusing on as we move forward through this presentation. And the third classification is regional parks. Think the farm, right? That's where folks can come and spend a whole day at a facility, whether it's hiking, it's trails, amenities, things that hold them there, that capture their attention. And it's a regional pool as well. So before we go in the future, just talk about a little bit, what do we currently have and when do these parks come on board here for the town? So we'll start with Redford Place Park, usually known as the ball fields, right across from Food Line behind Rolesville Elementary School. That park came on in 1992, and it's just shy of 10 acres. Main Street Park began construction in 2005. It's just shy of 36 acres. Millbridge Nature Park, I believe, was 2008. Again, it's around 38 acres. And the farm we purchased in 2017, and it's a 116-acre site. So again, just kind of reference those current parks, what we have. Redford Place Park, that was a joint venture with Wake County Public School Systems and Wake County. It was a model they had in the early 90s to work with communities in the school system when purchasing land to do a joint use there with those facilities. So that's 9.92 acres, just shy of 10 acres for that site that we have. We have Main Street Park. Again, the Phase 1 construction at the very front with the gazebos and the greenways at the original loop, that began in 2005. I believe it was around 2007, 2008, when Phase 2 of the greenways and the shelters took place. Millbridge Nature Park, I believe, and Mayor and Commissioner Wilson, you may be able to recall, I believe that was a fee in lieu park from the Heritage Development, where they built the amphitheater, the greenways, and donated the park itself to the town in lieu of paying development fees or impact fees. And that park is just shy of 39 acres total right now. In the farm, as we all know, we've talked about and we've seen, it was purchased in 2017. We're completing the 30% construction drawings at this time. And it's 116 acres. So that's our current park facilities that we have. Again, not all of it's developed, but that's the current property that the town currently owns. So as I move forward, we're going to talk about why we're talking about future parkland. So planned investment from the town's goals that you set forth. Number 6 is expand open space and recreation facilities. So that's one of the missions that was set forth as a goal as a town. And I believe some of this was taken from your comprehensive master plans that you adopted in 2017 as a town comprehensive plan, and the 2019 Parks and Recreation Comprehensive Plans are both addressed in there.
JJ, can I ask one quick question?
Yes, ma'am.
Just so I can catch up and understand.
Yeah.
So there are no pocket parks in Rolesville that are owned by the town, or if they are, they're owned by the developments?
Correct. They are private,
Okay.
owned by really they're turned over to the HOAs.
Do you know how many there are in Rolesville?
Of those, I don't have that number with me, no ma'am. Pretty much almost every development has some sort of recreation amenity within their community. That's something we were working with planning a while back, and it just kind of fell through the cracks, and we haven't picked that back up. But that's something we're working towards to get that exact number of what we have, is we think we could use that in our count of a 10-minute walk. So the national standard where they would like to have is everyone with a walkability within 10 minutes of a park. And we like to use some of those to help our numbers to increase our percentage of residents who have that ability. Did I answer your question?
How far is a 10-minute walk, you know? Is that a?
It's probably just shy of a mile, roughly. I mean, just think about if a leisure walk, you're about that's a pretty brisk walk to do a mile. So you're probably,
That's a fast mile.
It is, that's what I'm thinking.
we got to keep moving.
A mile's about
Walkability.
15 to 20 minutes.
Okay.
If you're walking it.
Right, so you're saying a half mile, 3/4 of a mile then, at that pace.
I'm like, you're running.
Yeah, I walked this Bridge Mile on 17.
So in in the Parks and Recreation Comprehensive Plan, one of the goals in there was provide secure additional parkland to meet future demand. As we all know, as we talk about at every meeting, there's always development coming before us. And so land in Rolesville is disappearing for future development. So we got to make sure that we are thoughtful and have the foresight to make sure we're securing properties of land for future growth of these parks. If not, once all the land's gone, as they say, there's not a machine that makes any more of it, and we won't have the opportunity to expand the recreation to meet the need in other regions of Rolesville.
Is that something, though, we can get developers to help us with in relation to our comp plan and our LDO? When we're thinking about development, you know, we think about our greenways, but we need to think about our parks as well. Isn't that something that we can pull a lever on?
Right, and I think that's where it gets that negotiations with the developer. A lot of times, if you see open space that's dedicated, it's not usable open space. It's not developable land. So what we're really looking for is developable land. And developable land, to be honest, the developers, that's money in their pocket. So that's a fine line that you may be able, if it's a large tract, they may have, 10 acres they can set aside and use, maybe the town at a certain rate to purchase from them. But that's just something, I think it's all negotiable as the developer comes through the door wanting to develop.
Especially, like you said, large developments, but that's something that this board can drive based on our LDO, right? Somebody answer me.
Yes.
Right?
I'm not a planner, I'm sorry.
I know, that's why I'm looking at Jason.
Yeah, the LDO has some open space requirements that are a little bit more than the UDO as far as usable space. And so a lot of times what you'll see is a community will do a parks and recreation master plan, which you all have. And if there's a development within a certain vicinity of one of those facilities identified there, you would work with that developer to try to realize, you can work with them to try to realize that
Gotcha.
through the rezoning. It's just, price of land right now is hard to get the development community
Sure.
to agree to give up anything. So usually what they want to dedicate is wetlands and,
Things that are not usable.
necessarily. But that's how you would utilize those tools or could utilize those tools to realize that.
And the other model is what you did up with Heritage and the Millbridge Park.
Say that again?
The other model is what you did, what was done up with Millbridge Park, where you traded essentially credits towards the park improvement fee, which can be used towards park building for a park site.
Right.
And that's typically how you would have to kind of approach that with a developer if they had a parcel they were willing to.
But it's nice to have developers come in, but this body is here to make sure that they're doing things that support our community. And if we don't push back, they're not going to just donate and be like, here's 20 acres for the town. So if we never ask, it's never going to happen. So I think it's on this body to push back.
So let
try
me
to
ask this
negotiate that.
question. So then are you scouting out those parcels of land and then it's up to you to know where they are? And then when a developer comes for us to be like, oh, that's one of our pieces.
They're
that we
cutting
had
to the
our eye on.
chase. They're cutting to the chase, Judy.
I just want to ask you
Yeah,
something.
No,
because-
you're doing really good questions.
I mean,
You're cutting to the chase, and he's going to get there if you don't
Okay, all
mind.
right, sorry.
I just have one quick question.
that
and It's
means.
not really about parks. Because I know in New York, we had where developers would come, they would dedicate some of the land that they were going to build on to schools. And, I would rather see, no offense, I'd rather see some land set aside for some additional schools than parks because, we haven't even developed what we have yet, but I know you always want some in your pocket for, future use, but where's the option of dedicating land for schools?
North Carolina has a school reservation statute that can be imposed. Again, the developer gets paid for that set aside, so it's not free. So you can force them to set it aside and reserve it for a period of time to allow for the community or the county to have the time to assemble the funds to take it. And then if the community moves in a different direction, then that land can eventually be developed,
By that same developer?
or by whatever business model they'd like to use, sure.
I guess, okay, thank you.
All right,
So
sorry.
I'll jump to the chase. So, but one more point I want to point out, or two really, is to provide parks with equitable geographic distribution. So that's something, again, while we're looking at different regions of where the parkland should go. And the other two is by our comp plan, we should develop 92 more acres by the year 2029 to meet that level of service to benchmarking of the level of parks that we need for that quality of life that we want to provide our citizens, you know, and so that livability, you know, that's what we really want to make sure that we drive home. Folks have come to really love Rolesville for is that quality of life that we provide here. So I will keep moving quickly through. The next is just a 2017 comp plan goal that almost states everything I just said in the previous slides before. So again, it's saying that we need that level of service standard, and how do we get there? And they have 4 park districts identified in that 2017 plan, and that's the 4 park districts. So I'm going to see if I can zoom in here a little bit for you. So this is Averitt Road, right here. And so and then it turns into Young Street, and this is Young Street, then turns into Rolesville Road. So that kind of gives you that one corridor where it's dividing. This area here, as we know, is mostly almost everything is watershed in Region 2. Main Street Park, to give some references, Main Street Park is going to be right here. And Millbridge Nature Park, it's over here, right up in here is Millbridge Nature Park. So we have 2 currently in Zone 1, and then Zone 3 or Region 3, you have the farm up off the screen here. And then in 3, we just do capture Redford Place Park. 4, thank you. Right in here in this region. So that's where we're at with our current locations of our facilities. And as you can tell, 2 of those facilities are within a mile of each other, Redford Place Park, Main Street Park, so they're right here on the corners. And so here is our current development. So this is, Commissioner Sneed, going back to your point, this is what we look at. Where's development going? Where's the trends? Where should we be focused on? Which areas are hot that we need to make sure we're not missing out on? So if you look to and I apologize, this is as large as I can zoom in. If you look to the north, right here is Wade Avenue or 98, coming down Averitt Road. And you're coming in down here to Jones Dairy Road. So just that corridor, there's almost 1,000 approved homes to be built or have been built or in the process of being built, up to, I think, probably over 1,000 new units in this just area right here. So obviously, if that's a big growth, that's somewhere we want to look for future parkland. The problem is, as you can see, it's almost full of color in this whole area. There's not much land available for parkland. Once we cross Averitt Road, this is all the watershed, so we're back in the same stipulations and constraints that we have with the farm property with water and sewer, impervious coverage in those areas. So that's one big region we're looking. And if you come down to the south, you have the Point, Kalis Falls, and as we just know, the Hopper communities have coming in as well. You're at 1,500 units right now, not counting anything else in the region that Michael was just talking about. If that's not industrial, it could be some residential. You're looking at over 15 to maybe close to 2,000 units down here in the south region. You know, giving a landmark, here's the high school. So it kind of gives you another idea. That's another region that we're looking at, that we know there's going to be a lot of residents. We want to make sure we're giving them opportunities, geographic quality throughout, and that's another region that we think is another focus. And with a third focus in the future, as Michael, I think that was number 1 on Michael's map over here, is you've got this big area here for future development. That could be another potentially unit for another third community-sized park in that region. So it just kind of gives you an idea of, Commissioner Sneed, to answer your question, we are looking, we're not actively knocking on doors, but we're thinking, where's development going? Where does the town need to be looking for these future parks to make sure we're providing that same level of service to all of our residents?
I'm struggling with your 10-minute analogy that you shared.
That's a
about the
national standard.
I
Yes,
know, but
ma'am.
I'm struggling
Yeah.
with that because I lived in Raleigh long before I lived in
Yeah.
Rolesville, right? And that does not exist.
Right.
So what,
It's a goal.
yeah,
Right.
but it feels like a longer-term goal. Is there a goal that's based around acreage compared to residents?
Right, and that's where
Acreage
that
of
level of
parkland.
service is 90, and by the year 2029, we should have another additional 92 acres of land developed.
So
to
how
meet
many
that level
is
of
that
service.
per resident? Like how many acres?
The 2017 plan called for 16 acres per resident, and the 2019 comp
Per
plan
resident?
called 11 acres per thousand,
Oh, I was about to say,
Yes, ma'am.
wait a minute.
Per thousand.
Everybody's gonna have a park.
This is the best time ever.
I'm like, wait a minute.
Everybody gets a
I
park.
said, I had a per thousand number. I was
Per
like, wait a
thousand.
minute.
Yep. Yeah, so the 2019 comprehensive plan, 11.8 acres of developed parkland per 1,000 residents. So we would develop, with our projected growth, we would need to develop additional 92 acres in the next 8 years to meet that level of service.
That number.
Yes, ma'am.
And this is for community parks, not pocket parks.
Just
all
develop, just
parks.
all parks.
So some of those developments that are up there in the green.
Those are considered private parks. These are, we're talking about public parks.
Okay.
Right, but I think where we shot our, well, let me not say it that way. The farm, right? So you've got this acreage of park, but location-wise, it doesn't truly serve for that 10-minute radius or the per resident deal because of its location. But
Right.
you really do have your acreage. in parks.
Looking at developing the farm in phase one is 55 acres. So it'd still be about 40 acres shy, once that's developed, in the next 8 years. So in addition to that 55 you're going to develop on the farm, another 40 acres roughly, you'd still need to develop to meet that level of service that's in our comprehensive plans.
Which is at our current,
That's at our projected.
okay, that is projected.
Yes, ma'am.
So we're 40 acres away.
Once we develop the farm.
I gotcha. I don't like that 10-minute thing. That
And
10-minute
anything
that
too,
we're-
as the town grows, I know that we have watershed restrictions, but the town will eventually grow at some point, and it'll get you there as well.
I don't think I know any community in Wake County where every resident is 10
No,
minutes away from.
they're not, and
That,
again,
to
that's
me,
a
sounds like what
lofty
Jackie
goal.
said earlier, a dream.
Right.
Yeah, that's not really, okay. I just wanted to make sure, because that didn't sound realistic to me.
Right, there's a
that a goal
website,
you
national
advertise?
website, and we're around 29% right now.
Is that a goal you advertise?
No, ma'am, that's just a national standard. That's not something, that's not a threshold that come before this board and said, yes, we want to hit this by 2029 also.
Oh, yeah.
That's just something that national standards, what everyone, they thrive to meet. You know, obviously, it's a very lofty goal.
Yeah, that's lofty. Okay, I just wanted to clarify that.
JG, does green space count?
So linear parks, some, I think, Cary is counting greenways, linear parks as parks. So that's another way to work that in. So there's always we call it recreation math.
Yeah,
I like
think Raleigh does
recreation
that
now.
too. We got the big Umstead and stuff like that, yeah. That makes sense.
So I'll breeze through the next. I just kind of really zoomed in on what the region looks like. Again, this is Averitt Road coming down through here. So you can see this region a little bit clear that it's really developed and getting a lot of development going there. Region 2, the farm property is probably right here, just off the map that we currently have. And then again, as we all know, this is a lot of the watershed region, and then the Chandler's Ridge is an option. I'll let Kelly maybe
No,
speak a
go
little
ahead
more.
and pause on that one, talk a little bit about that one.
Okay.
So you have a decision with the Parks and Rec Board, and what the hand is, that part of that development agreement, they agreed that if we were interested to buy 22 acres, I think, something
believe
like
so.
that, right where that hand is part of this development. It's the piece that's out of the watershed. I don't think it's the entire piece.
There's a little sliver outside, the rest is inside.
So we have to make that decision by May of 2022.
I
And then
thought it was
act,
a purchase with credits, like
We
because
can-
there's gonna write credit off.
It won't cost us cash, but the majority of that is in the watershed.
that's right.
So what are we gonna do with it if it's in the watershed?
So you can, well, I'll let JG describe, but you can put in, outside of watershed, you could put utilities. That could be your area where you could put a bathroom and such like that.
They did carve out a
I'm
small
talking about
part.
credits, I'm talking about tax credits,
They,
right?
oh, they could?
Because they talked about giving it away to a conservatory.
Well, but I think we ultimately talked
Did it-
about a value
So
to
did they
it.
back up on that, giving it away to a
Yeah, we
conservatory?
ultimately put it, I seem to remember there is a valuation in there, that we would do an appraisal and find a valuation.
There is a development agreement that was entered into between the town and the developer that provides for a fair market value evaluation of the area that we have an option on to establish a price.
And I thought that was to establish the tax credit.
I don't know if I had to go back, I have to go back and read it all over again. I can't remember if it goes to that nth degree. That doesn't mean you can't use it as that negotiation potentially.
Right.
I have to go
Because,
back.
you know,
Yeah.
the whole discussion started when they said they was gonna give it to the conservatory.
Yeah.
And I said, why give it to the conservatory, why give it to us? We'll
That's
give
right.
you a tax credit just like anybody else will. Right?
So before I answer that fully, I need to go back and read it. Make sure.
So that's Region 2.
And that would be for a public park,
Yes, ma'am.
okay?
Yeah, everything we're talking about would be public.
Just keeping my head straight here.
So at the end of the day, how many towns, I mean, you probably cannot answer that, but how many parks do you anticipate? Based on how far out we are now with construction?
I mean, honestly, I think at minimum, you're looking at additional 3 to 4 more parks to hit all, to distribute parks evenly throughout Rolesville as you go. As you think, we're centric right now. And I think a great analogy would be the rural fire department, right? How they went out and said, where's the growth going when they got their substations, right? It's the same premise with parks, right? You see that growth, where are they going? All of our parks the fire department right now is downtown. It's centrally located. It's hitting their current needs. Main Street Park, Redford Place Park, that hits that central need already. But as we grow to the north, the south, the west, and hopefully the east, we're going to need parks to go out there as well. Region 3, again, we talked about, we have the farm who captures that up here in this corner, in the northeast corner. And then you have the Hopper communities who's in that bottom. Again, this is Rolesville Road that's down here. And again, that kind of gives you some landmark ideas. And then the last region is Region 4, and you can see that's a large region. And it's really the region that Michael spent a lot of focus on this evening as well. So you'll see, again, we've talked about the Point with over 1,000 units, Kalis Falls with just shy of 500 units, and then TBD through this region here as well. So we see that as another need for a future park in the near future as well. With the growth and with the bypass, it does make it a lot harder to get back into town to use those facilities. And as we've kind of talked about what our current biggest needs are as a staff and as a Parks Recreation Advisory Board, we've realized that our two biggest needs because of the current development in Rolesville is to the north and to the south. In the yellow are your existing parks. So you can kind of see how we got Millbridge up here. You come down into town, you've got Main Street Park and Redford Place Park, and then you go out to the east and you've got the farm project. So we're really lacking with a lot of over 1,000 units to the north and over 1,500 units potentially and more to the south is where we're seeing that drive where we're going to need to go in the near future. May not develop it, but at least land bank before the land's not available to be banked for future parkland.
At the top of the north is 98, right?
Yes, ma'am. This is
Okay.
98 right
Okay.
here. Yes, ma'am. And so again, we're just using adopted plans as our guide, as kind of our roadmap. Where do we want to go and how do we get there? We use these adopted plans as staff to help guide us to that final destination. That's what I have for this presentation, to talk about why we're talking about future Lauren.
So, Mr. Mayor, I think with that being said, if you don't have any further questions on that, we're ready to suggest you enter an executive session so we can talk about this further. We do have a potential prospect. So we just want to make sure we went through this publicly and then you had a chance to answer questions, and then we do have a land issue we'd like to bring forward to you for consideration, so.
And the board did budget money for future parkland in the current budget, as well as in the CIP for future years as well, to keep that development going.
Okay. I think the attorney would tell us that if you have any more questions to do with this topic we're on, which is comprehensive plan regarding future parks, let's make sure we talk about them now and ask, JG, any questions we have, because once we go into closed session, we will only be able to talk about acquisition.
Oh, well, I got a whole lot of questions, because part of us purchasing that park, or the farm, I don't know what to call it, the 116 acres, or whatever the number is to develop it. And if we keep purchasing land, I feel like we purchased a lot of land, I get it, and basing it on these developments are approved. They're not built. Those are not tax dollars, unless there's some money that's come about that I don't know about. I don't know where these funds are coming from. So I understand the park, and there may be some money set aside for that, but we just bought something for Public Works. We're just buying something to develop for the municipal. At some point, you got to let the dollars roll in. So I'm a little confused about purchasing it, anticipating this is where we're going to be. And I would rather see other municipalities, how they have developed that are our size, comparable to our size now, and then a projected comparability in the future, and where are they? Because it's nice to dream, but I want a beach house. I don't have one, right? So I just feel like that sounds good even from a national standard. Rolesville is not that large. I know we're gonna get there, but I feel like we're kind of jumping the gun on the land. I do. So I'm struggling with that. Without having something locally in our region that we can compare it to, especially with 116 acres that's not yet developed. I'm struggling.
And quite frankly, that's my concern also, is we've got land we can't afford to develop.
You're right.
And I'm concerned about buying more until we develop what we've got.
What we have.
But again, I'm open to listening on how we can acquire it at a reasonable price, because the longer we wait, the more it could cost. But at the same time, I have a problem with the fact that we haven't done anything to show to the public at Fraser Farm. I mean, it's sitting there, and we haven't moved any dirt. We haven't played any ball games there, and we've owned it for 4 years. And that's a problem. But again, I'll listen.
Any questions from this side before we go into closed session? Any more? All right,
I do have a question, but it's not
Okay.
about this.
all right.
I just wanted to ask Chief something. Real quick, I'm sorry, it's not about Parks and Rec. In light of what happened with the go-karts, and knowing how we are allowing go-karts in the community, but they have to meet a certain specification, any thoughts on what just happened in Holly Springs and what protocols do we have in place, not to prevent that, because people are going to do what they want, but has it come up as a reconsideration? I never did like the golf carts ideas, but I'm just saying.
You have to forgive me, might have to educate me on what happened in Holly Springs, I'm not aware.
Okay, so I'm just going to say allegedly somebody was drunk driving a golf cart, and his wife ended up getting killed in that accident that they had. And I'm just a little concerned because I do see golf carts around Rolesville now. And anything, like, has there been a discussion yet or not yet?
Not that I'm aware of. As long as they follow the general statute and the guidelines that are set forth, and they meet the elements to operate a golf
is what
cart
it
on the
is.
roadway, then they can.
Just hope and pray they make smart decisions, okay.
Correct. But there has not been anything.
Well, and then I'm certain that was I think that was a golf community. So it may have been just a regular golf cart, which is not allowed here. We have to have roadworthy
Correct.
golf carts, but I don't know the specifics about that.
I don't either, so that's why I said allegedly, but it was a golf community. And I don't know, I'm just so nervous about golf carts
Yes, ma'am. To my
Right,
knowledge, and
over.
the manager may can speak to it, we have not had anybody come forth recently requesting for that to be put back on. So
Okay,
if anything comes out of it, I'll be glad to update you.
all right,
Yes, ma'am.
okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? All right, I entertain a motion.
I make a motion that we move to closed session pursuant to NCGS 143-318.11A5, property acquisition.
Okay, I have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any other discussion? All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Not hearing any. We will adjourn to closed session.